Hello and welcome to this week's Scriptcase video. My name is Jamie Oates and I am your host today. In this week's video we will be integrating the Shoelace web library or library of web components into Scriptcase or with Scriptcase, depending on how you see that. Now, using Shoelace, it is a basic framework which has many elements ready for you to use and integrate, and that you can then also apply into your own applications within your that you can also apply within your own Scriptcase applications. Now, checking out the shoelace.style website, and that is https://shoelace.style, and here you can then check out the Shoelace web library that is available and each of the available components. So I'm checking here first of all the overview, and here on the first page you have everything you need for the quick start, how you can integrate the web components and basically what it's all about, what web components are and so on. And on the left hand side here you have the list of various frameworks that you can easily integrate with. But of course in this case we are using strict HTTP because we are integrating that with Scriptcase, of course. And then further at the bottom here we have many components that we can then use within our Scriptcase applications. So here for instance we have a dialog box which we can then open and click, and it looks like that, which is quite nice. It's very functional and it has various other elements that we can include and come with their own type of style. For instance, one of the other elements you can add here, for instance, we have elements here, alerts, we have avatars, we have badges, there are breadcrumbs, and there is much more. Now, some of these I will be taking and integrating them into Scriptcase and showing you how you can maybe improve the looks of some of your applications using some of these available frameworks that we have online today. Okay, so I am now logged into Scriptcase, and from here I will choose to create a new project. And typically we would have a database to start off with, but in today's video I don't have any database prepared for anything, so I really actually want to use one of these that I have available with the current templates. So what I'm going to do is choose here the samples applications, and I'm just going to run through that and click next, and I will choose then also to create a new connection to my database and MySQL. And that will now link that to my database that I have available locally. And then here I can then choose to create the database, and we'll call that db_samples, and then click create. And then we can test that connection, and it should show as connection success, and then click the next button. Now Scriptcase will go ahead now and generate all of the applications and add the MySQL database for the samples project that is available within Scriptcase. Now, if the samples project isn't something you have already created, then it is definitely a good idea that you do so. For many reasons. One would be that you have many samples available within this massive samples project. You will have samples and demonstrations of just about everything that you can achieve within Scriptcase using macros, the forms, the grids, the PDFs, and much more. You can also check out a history of updates that have been applied to Scriptcase, and all of those are then nicely listed for you within a functional menu, of course using the Scriptcase architecture. Okay, so once that has been then created, the database may take a little while because there are a great deal of tables. There are a lot of tables for all of the applications that are actually within this project. And now within the samples project, you can then of course copy or transfer applications even from project to project, or replicate them, learn from them, and just see how they work however you please. For today's video, I really just want to have this samples database added into my local database so that I can also use it now for today's video. So with that, the project will be ready in a few moments. As I said, the database is quite large and that can take a few moments to actually set up the database. So do be patient while this is actually running. As you see, it is also running on this side. It isn't because it's just slow on your side. It is in fact because there are a great deal of tables and a lot of data that is also added to that, of course, so you can actually visualize the applications that are available for these samples and work that data. And for that, you generally need to have a large data set so that you can have a clear view of what you are actually working on. So in this case, we are basically importing or generating, should I say, with Scriptcase, the samples project, which is what I'm doing right now still, and importing the entire database. Now, once the database has then completed, we will then be able to access or generate the source code for this, or of course open the project. Now, how you proceed will be entirely up to you. You can of course continue on and play around with this samples project straight away, or you can go ahead and close it and just use the samples database, which is what I will be doing when we come back within this video. Okay, and we are back again, and we are still of course creating the database. Now I hope you have been patient on your side and the database has either completed or it is of course still in progress, which it may well be, because of course I will be cutting the database creation out of this video. So you will be missing quite some minutes there where the database is being created, and as you see, it's still being created here and it should be finished any moment now, where of course it will allow me to generate the source code. Where of course it will allow me to generate the source code. Now the samples database is in fact the largest database that is available with all of the project samples, or templates should I say, within Scriptcase. And for this reason of course it takes a great deal of time for this samples database to be inserted into your own database. So locally I should mention that it does take a good 15-20 minutes for the complete database to be inserted into my local WAMP server. Okay, so that is important to note. On a remote server it does go a little faster, and of course the creation of the database is a little faster there also. And when you then come to creating or generating the source code for your applications, the database will of course be used by each and all of these applications within the samples template. But of course you can also dissect the database for your own purposes if you please. As I mentioned, the samples database is very large. It includes a very large data set also, and is perfect for visualizations and showcasing, for instance. And for that reason of course is why I am also generating and using the samples project database. Now if you already have used the samples template and you have the database available within your project, then you can of course just start to use those database tables that are available to you within the samples database, or samples template should I say. Okay, with your samples database created and your samples project, you will have the samples template then available within your dashboard. And with that then, we can also then come to create a project, and in this case create a blank project. I'll also choose an icon which I have available within my public folder, and there I have some icons, and here I will just choose one of the icons here that I have available. And we just choose here the screen and add that, and that will then be used as an icon for the project. Now I will call the project Shoelace because that is what I will be integrating today, or adding into Scriptcase, and then I will go ahead and click the next button. Now I can add further details there, the description and information if I wanted to. In this case there is really no need, so I will not bother. Okay, so for the connections, as we had seen previously within the samples template, we can there generate or choose where we want to have our database created. Now in that case, the database or the full database with datasets are included within the templates. In our case, where we create a blank project from scratch, which we have just started to do, we need to choose a database and either create a new table or have a table available for us to use. Now Scriptcase supports many of the main databases today. We have Google Cloud, Amazon RDS, even Microsoft Access, Firebird, SQLite and more. Now, generally we use MySQL because it's very easy to set up locally and of course easy for us to work with. In general, you work with all of the databases the same way as you would do any of them. So there is no difference really in how you would work within Scriptcase. Within Scriptcase you can continue on and it will generate your applications according to your database. Now, as I had said previously, I do not have a username password. It's just root and then blank password for my local database. And the reason for that is, of course, because it is a local testing database and I generally switch it off. So if you have a live database, do make sure you include the correct username, password, and possibly server host or location of your MySQL server or database server. We can then go ahead and list the database, and I have here the DB samples which I had generated or created with the samples template previously within Scriptcase. I can go ahead and test the connection there and click next. Now I can then add some languages if I wanted to, so I can add more languages here. There's a whole list of languages available, pretty much every language under the sun, as well as all of the regional settings. So for each language you can also assign specific regional settings and change those according to your own needs or platform. The character set can then also be defined, and you can also choose a default language. So in our case we just need the one language, so I will just leave it as English and go next. Of course if you want to add more then you can do that. So we have then here the themes or the theming system that we want to have applied to all of our applications. Now generally we use here the Blueberry, which you see is as the default. I'm really not in a Blueberry mood today, so I'm going to use here the SC9 Midnight and remove the Blueberry and use the SC9 Midnight as my main theme today. So I can load more themes which are available within Scriptcase, and each of these themes can also be saved as your own template, as your own theme, and you can also go ahead and use that and customize that fully within the theming tools that you have within Scriptcase. Okay, so once the theme has been chosen, I'll go ahead and go create. I can choose more. If I want to have more themes, then you can go ahead and choose more. You will need to add then, for instance, the theming option within the menu, so you can switch that, or of course use the Scriptcase macros and change the theme within the back end using JavaScript or any other mechanism that you can think of. Okay, so starting Scriptcase, we are always requested to create first of all a project and then a first application. Now if there are any problems with the project and the database, i.e. the connection, or there are no tables or anything along those lines really, then Scriptcase will at this instance give you an error message and tell you that there is something wrong with the database or that you need to add some tables, for instance. Now in our case we are using the samples database, so we really don't need to do that today, and for that purpose I can just go ahead here and choose a grid application, for instance, and if I choose here the table drop down menu, I have then all of the tables that are available within the samples database, which was generated using the samples theme. And of course we are then just connecting to that database and then using these tables within this new project. So for this video, I will choose here the products table, for instance. And you can see here, once I choose that, it will provide me the SQL select over here on the right hand side. Now I can adjust that manually. For instance, I can add a where statement in here if I wanted to, or manually change the select I have here, or any of those details. Now do notice at the bottom here you have also the SQL builder. If you struggle with SQL or are not sure how to formulate your selects, especially when you are joining multiple tables or wanting to connect to multiple tables, then simply choose here the SQL builder and then build your own selects or custom selects, and then you can paste that in here also. And then instead of choosing here the table, you are using a manual select, and you are then simply defining the name of that application. So in this case we are sticking with the grid products and the products table, but I do want to choose here the option to also create a form to edit the grid data, or simply to generate a form that is linked to this grid. Okay, so by checking this box here, I can then specify the name of the form that is then linked to this grid application. Now if I go ahead and click create, Scriptcase will now generate both the grid application and the form application, but notice it only opens the grid here and then generates the source code. So then to view the form application, we then need to manually open that application within Scriptcase. Once the generation has completed, and there we go, we have then two applications generated. And if I come here into home, we can see here the status updated for the grid, as well as the form, indicating that the form has also been generated. And if I just click on the form, it will then open up, and from there I can customize the form layout as well as all of the options here. So if I just go ahead and run that, you can see then the basic products form. Okay, so that is the box standard form that is then generated within Scriptcase. The difference of course would depend on the theme selected, and then of course the data or table that you have within your form. And the same applies also to your grid application. So here within the grid application, we can see that this is the default grid, again with the black theme or the midnight theme, and then no adjustments here. We have ID numbers for supplier as well as the category, and it's just a very straight form. But do notice, however, because we generated both the grid and the form at the same time, we have also the add new button here, so that links us straight away to the form, and the form back to the grid. And over to the left here we also have the edit options, which then takes us directly to that item or line or product or whatever it is you have there within your data, and allows us then to edit that information within a form. So that is then automatic, all generated and created for you within Scriptcase straight off the fly. There's nothing difficult there to do. You just choose your data, your table, or modify your data even, and click a few buttons, and you have a presentable grid. Now of course you can make many adjustments to all of your applications. As you saw just now, the form application, if I had it open still, we'd have the tab here, but I have closed it. The similarity to the views, so if I go ahead and open that again, is right there. So there are some slight differences. For instance, we have here the form orientation, and here we have the grid modules. Now the first page on each application will be specific for that application, but otherwise, for instance, if I come here to settings and then products and settings, they are near identical, just with some slight variances depending on the type of application, but in general you will find all of the same settings and everything in the same locations, making it easy for you. Now before I jump on, one very important tip: before you generate 100 applications and you want to customize all of them, do check out here your project and your default values, because then here within your default values you can already make changes, for instance here to your grid, Okay, so here we can make adjustments to all the grid applications that are generated, as in the layout of the menu, the toolbars, how the grid application is basically configured, the icons that are displayed, and much more, as well as for the form application and all of the other applications that we have within Scriptcase. So making your global adjustments here within the default values, so project and default values, and then you will be able to have those changes applied to all of these applications a lot faster as you generate them, saving you having to go back and forth and make minor changes left, right and center. So here, for instance, one of the basic settings we like to apply for the grid is set here the vertical alignment to top, and just by running that it will actually move my grid application. Like you see, it just moves it up into the top corners and makes it near enough a full width grid. Now in some cases it may not be full width, and for that we can come here to grid modules, and here we have then the table width, and I can set that here to 100 and change the width unit to % and run that again, and that will then force the grid to be the 100 width as well. As you see, it just moved in on both the left and right sides there and brought that in nice and tight. Okay, so now that we have our grid application ready, what I want to do is show you how we can actually add Shoelace into our Scriptcase applications and how we can use some of these easy to use features or capabilities of Shoelace within our applications. So for instance, if we have a look here, we have an alert, which is quite nice. So we could use this somewhere probably, but in general, we have some badges here, which is very nice. And I really do like these pulsating badges. And we also have badges with buttons, which is something that can also be applied, as well as badges with menu items and so forth. So to copy any of these applications, we simply need to choose here the source and then copy the source code into our Scriptcase application. So in this case, the SL dash is always a Shoelace component. Okay, so if we check here the source, SL badge, and if I come here to alert, for instance, check here the source, SL dash alert. Okay, so it is always SL dash, and that is always a Shoelace component. And with that, you can actually make various adjustments to each of these. For instance, you have all of the examples here for closable, so you can actually close the box with icons, without icons, that shows the alert for a duration and so forth. And if you check the source code, you'll see that you can apply these features with very simple tags, and that are then very quickly and easily applied to your elements for your page. So to give you a very clean and a different look within your applications. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go ahead here with, for instance, let's just choose a basic badge. So I'll choose here the SL badge variant, and I'll come here into Scriptcase, and to use that, I would generally create here, first of all, some new fields, and then use that here within the events, which we will do shortly. And we do also need to copy the basics over. So if I just copy that in here for the on record, because this is where we will be using the badge, and so I'm adding // so that is then added basically as a comment within this application, and then that is just added there, and then we can check that out when we come to it. Okay, so within this grid application, if we check this out, we have here first of all the supplier ID, the category ID, and some boxes here with some values. For instance, we have here the units in stock, the units on order, and the reorder level, as well as discontinued. Now each of these 4 containers here, or 4 items, we could basically use our badges for these and basically change how they look, for instance. Okay, so if we want to do that, we want to create first of all some new fields. So I will leave the discontinued because I kind of feel like that if you would have the discontinued there as a 0 or 1, then maybe you would want to group that. So we can actually group those, which we'll do then also shortly. So first of all, let me add 3 new fields into this grid application. and I will call the field first of all here in stock, and then the other one on order, and then the final one order level. Okay, let's leave that as that. Let's choose create, and that will create 3 new fields, 3 new text fields within my grid application. And if I go ahead and run that now, we can then see there that I now have over the right here 3 new fields here added to my grid. And generally what we would do then to add, for instance, the data from that field to the new field, for instance, we have here in our table, we have here units in stock, and that would then want to be added into the in stock field. So let's add here also the in stock field, and then in stock equals units in stock, and then we close that off. And if I go ahead and run that now, that will now insert that new value into the in stock field. You see, now that has replicated this into this field, and that will then allow us to make any type of adjustment we want to this value, as well as to the data or how it is displayed. And then we want to basically apply that then also to the other 3 fields. So we have then or on order, and we have then order level. Okay, and on order was then units on order, and order level was then reorder level, like so. And if I go ahead and run that now, those fields will then be applied to those new fields that I have added, like so. Okay, and then we can of course go ahead, and if I come here to edit fields, I can then adjust these fields where I want to have them positioned. Now I can change the positions here also within field positioning, but personally I prefer to actually do that here. So first I'm going to remove here the product ID. We don't need that. The reorder level, the units, and units in stock can then go, and then we just simply adjust or readjust the positions of these. And then what we can do while we're here is we can also make adjustments to the titles of these fields and have that a little cleaner in our application for us. Now of course we could go ahead and use variables, which is something I would personally prefer to use, adding here a data dictionary to the application, and then use labels or variables throughout the application when possible, so that it is then a little cleaner and easier to manage. Now do notice, because I've added also these 3 new fields over to the right here, I have no alignment, and that means within the grid application they will be by default to the left or sometimes in the center. So it is better actually to go ahead and position those straight away from here, and you can of course go ahead and do that with the rest of them. I will actually hide here the discontinued also, and I'll save that, and then we can change here all of these elements, move that all to left, 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 and move these elements here to center actually. And that way then we have our data a little more organized here within our grid application. Okay, so sometimes if it doesn't align straight away where you want it to, then just F5 and refresh your browser, and it should update. Okay, so now that we have those there, it's all nice and tidy. We still want to add here the supplier and the category, so very quickly let's go ahead and do that. I choose then here the supplier ID, choose here the lookup method automatic, and that will then allow me to use here the create select, and there I can then choose the associated table, which in this case is then the suppliers table. If I find it here, suppliers, company name, and indicate the connection and save that. Okay, and then the same also here for the category ID, which is the category ID, and then here for the lookup method automatic. And again here we choose categories, category name, and then we just leave that as so. And if I go ahead now and run that, we'll have then the details here instead of the numbers, and there we go. We can then see supplier and category. And one more thing we wanted to do here was then also group that by the what was discontinued. So group by discontinued, discon, leave that as so, and here let's just have the record count, and then we can go ahead and save that and run that again, and now we will see that we'll have that also grouped, discontinued, 0 or 1. And of course, if we want to make changes to that, we can adjust in here the field, which we have here, the fields, discontinued, and then 0 or 1. We do not have that added to the grid. We do not add the lookup method there. So I can add that here separately for the group by, or adjust that here within the fields. Now to access it again within the fields, I would need to drag it or position it within the fields positioning so that I can edit it back again within this list and then hide it again, which is not a problem, and that is something that I would also generally do. But in this case, I will just choose here the field for the group by, set that as manual, and I'll say yes as 1 and no as 0, and insert both of those, save that, and then of course we can go ahead and run the application again, and there we will now have yes and no, or no and yes. Okay, and that is then added into the grid application. So we want to of course get on and add here Shoelace in here. So that is the main topic for today. So here within our application on init, we have here first of all in the overview for Shoelace, we have here the option for the quick start to add this into our page. So what I will do is just copy that, and then here on application init, I will close the PHP, paste in the scripts and the style sheet, and then we open the PHP again. Okay, so that will then basically place this in there and allow us to place some HTML code within or between these PHP brackets. And if I go ahead and run that now, that will, Shoelace will now be added to the grid application, and you can see straight away it makes a slight adjustment there. So there are some elements that you may want to change by hand and adjust those. Alternatively, of course, you could also add Bootstrap in there and all depending, which is something we will have a look at in a moment. Okay, so on record we had it here our in-stock units and our units in order, as well as our record level. So I've already prepared a little something here. So what I'll do is I will just comment these ones out here, and if I just then paste this little bit of code in here, so it's a little if statement. If it's 0, then we will display a danger badge with a 0 number. Otherwise, if it's less than 10, we have a warning. If it's more than 50, we'll have a success. And of course, you can adjust this as you please. The choice is all yours. This is really just for demonstration purposes. And then I have here also if empty units order, and if empty reorder level, and those will then also apply the Shoelace styling and badges to these elements. And just like that, we have that in a nice clear view of how many items are missing or ordered or whatever data that you are wanting to share in there. Of course, you can also generate or create, should I say, your own little badges with buttons, and then link that to modal windows, other applications, and so much more. Okay, so there are a few elements I'm sure you can place into the form. That is entirely up to you. I have for a few items there, you can always use the header as well as the footer areas within the form application, and you are also able to Ajax some content into a field. So that is something worth checking out. But for now, what I'm going to do is again keep it simple today. I'm going to jump here into a blank application, and within the blank application I'm just going to show you very quickly how you can add Scriptcase with Bootstrap as well as Shoelace into another blank application or your own dashboard or whatever it may please. Okay, then with the blank application open, we do ideally need to comment out first of all some PHP, or open and close and then open our PHP statement, should I say, and then within that we can then start to create our document. Now I'm just going to copy and paste an entire page in here, and this is basically a Bootstrap page. So I do have a library that I will need to add to this in a few moments, and that will include then all of the Bootstrap files and style sheets. And then we also have the Shoelace style sheet. So some of you may think, well, why use multiple style sheets here? Of course, the choice is yours. I just really wanted to use here the Bootstrap min.css. Really, there's really no need for these extras here, the block or the styles. But there, for some reason, I just included them. And at the bottom here, we just have here all of our HTML content for our various Shoelace components. Now you may be wondering what we have here, and we have here first of all a tabbed element and some list items. So I go ahead and run that, and then you can see that then being run here within a blank page. Now it looks quite simple, basic right now, because of course there is no Bootstrap enabled yet, but we have here a fully functional tabbing element. We have here the Shoelace icons, which are then added, and then the rest of it is then provided with Bootstrap. So if I come then into, first of all here, our tools, I have then the option for external libraries, and then here within external libraries we have a whole list of libraries available, and of course we can go ahead and generate or create our own one. I'm just checking if I have it here. I don't have, so we're just going to start off then with a new one. So what I'll do is then save here these samples, and I'll save that here for project, and I'll call that files. Okay, and that will save those library files, these sample library files, which includes here, first of all, if we check here with edit, we can check what's included here. We have here the default login pages, examples, templates that are included with Scriptcase that you see within all of the videos, or that are included within some of also the templates or themes. We have then also the form examples, libs, and menu. So what we want to do then is come here to Bootstrap, and then we can actually download Bootstrap and actually import that as a library. And of course we can go ahead and do that, but to make it a little shorter, I'm just going to go ahead and copy that here from the CDN and continue with that instead of using the library. But now I could of course add this library. If I go ahead and close that, scroll down, that library is now available for this project. So I could of course go ahead and upload all of these Bootstrap files into a new library and then add them here. So what I'll do then is actually just comment these out like so, and then of course we can then think about reusing them maybe for alternative purposes. But for this case, let's just go ahead and copy here that piece of CDN code there. We paste that in there, and let's go ahead and run that now, and then let's see what it looks like now with Bootstrap enabled as well as Shoelace. And you can see there that we have straight away some enhancements and changes made to this page. We have here a nice layout, which of course works quite nicely as a dashboard application to show various content and have it look nice, or even match your other content that you have within your pages. Now, other areas where you may want to use Shoelace or Bootstrap, of course, would essentially be within the menu application. And if I open a new or create a new menu here, for instance, within the menu application, we can then also use here the events. And within the events, again, we can copy and paste here the Shoelace code or the CSS style sheet, as well as the JavaScript that is required for some of the elements. And now if I then come here into the layout and menu structure, what I can then do is I can then drag here an item here into the menu, and I'll just give that some more space there. I'll save that for now, and then I'll come here to programming, PHP methods, and create a new method. Now here for the method, I'll call this draw and click create. And then what I would do is I will paste a bit of code that I have prepared here already, which is also taken from the Shoelace website here. And you have on the left hand side here the draw option, and that then opens a draw item just like so. And if I then go ahead and save that, and then here back in the menu structure, I can edit that here and then choose here the method and choose the draw method which I have just created, save that, and then go ahead and run. Now you may notice that I have also included an avatar here, which is also fully functional or visible there. And of course, just like that, we then have then also a draw option or feature added into our menu, for instance. So if I come here back to settings, and then I'll choose here one application as the first application, and that then opens up this box here, and I can choose then here the blank application which I had just created there. Go ahead and run that, and just like that we have then also the dashboard element with the Shoelace or Scriptcase bootstrap components there, and that is then fully functional. And of course that opens then these items in new pages. That is actually a new page there, and we can have these then as links displaying content from your database or manual, however you please, and that is then also fully functional there. Now the avatar, that is also taken here from Shoelace, and there you have the avatar. Here we have the source code for no personal object, and there it is with an image. So if I wanted to replace that, for instance, for one with an image, I can then come back here to my method, and I have here the avatar element. I can replace that, run that, and that will then display that with the cat image that is then also included. And of course we can grab this image from our database and then update this item or this framework item from Shoelace and add that into our project, speeding up some of our beautification, should I say, of our Scriptcase applications. Okay, so that is pretty much it for this week. As I said, it is very short and simple this month. I hope you have enjoyed it. I do apologize, it is a short one, but I hope you have enjoyed. So thank you very much for watching this Scriptcase webinar, and of course I hope you do join us in the live event, which is typically on the Friday. And if you was there, then I'm sure you would have had everything I've shown you now within this video, as well as maybe some extra tips and bits and pieces, which of course I usually like to share within our live sessions. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed. Until next time.